guys, it's Ty with Ty the Dog Guy on the daily, and I want to talk about teaching your dog to be proactive. So there's this phrase that I use quite a bit with a lot of my clients when we're working with their dogs, and what that phrase is the more proactive your dog is in fixing his or her mistake, the sooner he or she won't make that mistake. So let me kind of give an example that teaches the concept that I'm trying to get across here. So one thing that a lot of people deal with, that we work on a lot with nearly every dog, is leash pulling, right? Maybe your dog is one that leash pulls, but nearly every dog I meet for the first time is pulling on a leash. And so we teach a method called the crazy man method. And what the crazy man method is as we're walking, if the dog goes too far ahead, we do a 180, give a little tug, a little communication with the leash. The dog goes left, we go right. The dog goes right, we go left. The dog goes forward, we go backwards. And so what the dog starts to realize after a little while is, man, I got to watch out for this guy. He's crazy. Who knows where he's going to walk? I go this way, he goes that way, I go left. This guy's nuts. And so soon the dog realizes, hey, if I just stay right here, I can pay attention. Now, the crazy man method is great, and for most dogs, it gets the dog at least 80% of the way there. But then there's some dogs that as they are walking, might kind of nudge forward a little bit. You know, after doing the crazy man method for a few weeks, the dog's like basically not pulling, but again, still kind of might nudge forward a little bit here or there. And so we start teaching the easy command. Now what the easy command is as the dog goes forward, we might pause, use the leash to kind of give some correction, give some motivation for the dog to physically, but also mentally turn around, get back to our side, and then we go on our way. And so let me contrast this with what most people do. So again, what we do is we pause, the dog kind of comes back, and then we go on our way. Most people, when they do the crazy man method, and the dog's now walking pretty well, when the dog nudges forward, they just kind of pop the leash and they catch up to the dog. And so there's a really small but meaningful difference in the two things. On the one end, the dog physically has to turn around, come back to my side, repay attention, and then we go back on our way. That little pause causes the dog to be proactive. Because again, the dog has to turn around, come back, reposition, realign, which is a lot of proactivity on the dog's part. Whereas if we're walking along and I just check the leash and then I catch up, there was no proactivity. The dog was not engaged in solving the problem. The dog didn't have to give one iota of thought towards solving the problem. The dog was just simply a passenger in this motion where, you know, got a little tug, got a little check on the leash, and then, you know, we keep going. And so this is just one example, but every obedience thing, every manners thing that we're teaching dogs, we often find this to be the case between good results and great results, is teaching the dog to be proactive in their response. And so maybe it's the same thing like as we're teaching the dog to go to his or her bed. Now, I often talk about this as we're into the training process, as we're into the dog kind of understanding what we want, or definitely understanding what we want, is where the proactivity really comes in. So let's say we're trying to teach the dog to go to his or her bed, and we've used the leash and we've guided the dog there, and once the dog understands, maybe a little bit of a correction. But now let's say the dog really understands the place command and goes there on command and gets off from time to time. Now, if the dog gets off, and I grab the leash and I drag the dog back, there was no proactivity on the dog's part. The dog didn't have to think or choose or anything. He just kind of got dragged back. Now, on a kind of polar opposite, but same, you know, kind of fundamental mistake, if I just toss a treat onto the bed, the dog wasn't, and the dog goes back to the bed, the dog wasn't solving a problem. He wasn't being proactive in solving the problem. He was just going because there was a treat there. And so what I may do is I may use, you know, just a little bit of a correction. And it's not a drag, maybe just a little tap on the leash. And maybe the dog still doesn't go, so maybe another little tap. And maybe the dog still doesn't go, but another little tap. And in doing that, maybe I give 2, 3, 4 taps on the leash. But in between those taps, the leash is now loose, and the dog has the ability to be proactive or not. You know, the dog can choose not to move forward, in which case I am going to motivate with the leash. And in which case the dog might now move forward, or maybe he doesn't. But again, if I'm just dragging the dog back, the dog is not thinking, not being proactive, and therefore we're going to run into this problem over and over and over. Whereas if I can use just a little bit of a leash and just kind of create an environment where the dog can be more proactive, very often we're going to see that problem go away much, much quicker. So I can guarantee you that in your efforts to train your dog, maybe you've realized it before, maybe you haven't, but somewhere in your efforts to train your dog, this concept and this principle have reared their head to where requiring the dog, teaching the dog to be more proactive, either taught the dog to learn faster and get there sooner to our ultimate goal, or not doing that actually hamstringed us to where the dog didn't have to think so much, and we've kept dealing with that problem, or maybe you're still dealing with this problem as you're listening to this podcast. So think on that and think what you can be doing to get your dog to be more proactive.